สวัสดีนะคะรัชดานะคะไม่ทราบได้ยินไหมคะเผอิญวันนี้อินเทอร์เน็ตที่บ้านเสียค่ะเลยต้องใช้ 5G แทน
ได้ยินค่ะ
โอ้ขอบคุณมากเลยค่ะที่ช่วยบอกโอเคตอนนี้นะคะ10:20เดี๋ยวเราจะเริ่มตอน10:30นะคะโดยที่วันนี้เราจะมี Case Study นะคะซึ่ง Case Study จะมี2เคสนะคะเคสแรกจะเริ่มประมาณ10 11:20แล้วเคสถัดไปจะเริ่มประมาณเที่ยงกว่าๆนะคะซึ่งทั้ง2เคสเนี่ยเราจะมีเอกสารประกอบนะคะเอ่อเมื่อเช้าเนี่ยได้ยุ้ยเพสตัวลิงก์ไปให้แล้วนะคะแต่ยังไงเดี๋ยวถ้าเกิดยังไงเดี๋ยวจะเพสให้อีกรอบหนึ่งนะคะถ้าเพสได้แต่ว่าเดี๋ยวอีกสักตอน10:30เนี่ยแหละค่ะเดี๋ยวยุ้ยจะสรุปเคสให้ฟังนะคะเพื่อที่จะได้อ่านได้สะดวกขึ้นเร็วขึ้นแล้วก็จะได้ทำเคสได้สะดวกขึ้นนะคะเดี๋ยวยุ้ยใส่ลิงก์ให้นะคะแป๊บหนึ่งค่ะวันนี้อินเทอร์เน็ตที่บ้านเสียตั้งแต่เช้าแล้วค่ะ เคสแรกนะคะหน้าจอจะเป็นประมาณนี้นะคะเดี๋ยวก่อนนะคะขออนุญาตแชร์ให้ดูนะคะขอหยุดวิดีโอตัวเองก่อนนะคะจะได้ไม่ดึงแบนด์วิดต์นะคะจะสังเกตได้ว่าวันนี้ช้ามากเลยนะคะ ฮัลโหลได้ยินแล้วใช่ไหมคะคราวนี้เผอิญว่าเป็นคนโลเทคค่ะไม่สามารถทำหลายอย่างในเวลาเดียวกันได้ เอ่อวันนี้นะคะเดี๋ยวเราจะมีเคส2เคสนะคะรบกวนไปที่แชทบ็อกซ์นะคะแล้วก็ดาวน์โหลดเคสนะคะเคสแรกจะหน้าตาประมาณนี้นะคะมีประมาณ6แผ่นนะคะเดี๋ยวยุ้ยจะสโกให้ดูนะคะแล้วเดี๋ยวยุ้ยจะสรุปเคสให้ฟังบางส่วนนะคะเพื่อที่เวลาทำเคสจะได้ง่ายขึ้นนะคะแล้วก็อีกเคสหนึ่งจะเป็นหน้าตาประมาณนี้นะคะ นี่เป็นเคสที่2นะคะเดี๋ยวเรารอเริ่ม10ครึ่งพร้อมกันทุกท่านนะคะเดี๋ยวสรุปเคสให้ฟังก่อนนะคะแล้วก็ถ้ามีเวลาเหลือเราก็จะทำตัว Morning Quiz ให้นะคะแต่ถ้าเกิดไม่เหลือเราก็จะตัดสู่ให้กับทางยุโรปเลยแล้ววันศุกร์คือวันพรุ่งนี้เรามีเวลาในระดับหนึ่งเราก็จะมาทำควิสทั้งหมดก็ได้แล้วก็ทำควิสของเช้านี้ก็ได้แล้วก็มีเวลา discussion กันมากขึ้นนะคะตัวเคสตัวเคสที่2เนี่ยเป็นอิสลามิกแบงค์นะคะเอกสารค่อนข้างเยอะนะคะเนี่ยค่ะค่อนข้างจะเยอะพอสมควรนะคะในระหว่างนี้รบกวนดาวน์โหลดเคสมาก่อนแล้วก็เผื่อจะได้อ่านไปก่อนนะคะเดี๋ยวเรารอ10ครึ่งเพื่อรอให้ทุกท่านเข้าพร้อมกันนะคะอันนี้เคสที่1นะคะเปิดให้ดูไว้ก่อนเลยค่ะ ท่านใดที่ยังไม่ได้เข้าเมนติมิเตอร์นะคะรบกวนเข้าเมนติมิเตอร์ให้ด้วยนะคะเผื่อว่าเราจะได้ทำตัวเก็บคะแนนนะคะของวันนี้นะคะวันนี้อินเทอร์เน็ตที่บ้านไม่ดีนะคะตอนนี้ใช้5G อยู่อะค่ะวันนี้อาจจะช้าทางนี้นะคะต้องกราบขอโทษด้วยนะคะคุณปณิยากรุณาส่งลิงก์ของ Mentimeter ของวันนี้ให้แล้วนะคะเดี๋ยวเราจะสรุปเคสกันก่อนนะคะแล้วถ้ามีเวลาหรือเราจะทำMorning Quiz กันนะคะก่อนที่จะเข้าเวลา11โมงเพื่อจะให้ทางยุโรปเขาเข้ามาเริ่มเซสชันถัดไปนะคะแต่ถ้าเกิดไม่มีเวลาเหลือนะคะเราสามารถที่จะไปทำวันพรุ่งนี้เช้าได้นะคะแต่ยังไงรบกวนขอเข้าเมนติก่อนนะคะเพื่อที่ว่าเดี๋ยวถ้าเกิดเราเริ่มสวิชเข้าสู่เมนติแล้วทุกท่านจะได้ไม่ต้องเสียเวลานะคะขอบพระคุณนะคะแล้วก็ท่านที่เข้ามาใหม่นะคะถ้าเกิดท่านยังไม่ได้ดาวน์โหลดเคสนะคะรบกวนดาวน์โหลดเคสนะคะเอ่อรบกวนน้องๆช่วย copy ลิงก์ให้อีกทีได้ไหมคะเดี๋ยวลองดูว่า copy เองได้ไหมนะคะโอเคนี่ลิงก์เคสที่1นะคะแล้วก็อันนี้เป็นลิงก์เคสที่2แล้วในช่วงท้ายๆอะค่ะของเซสชันนะคะจะมีลิงก์ของตัว second opinion ของเคสที่2ให้ด้วยนะคะแต่ณเวลานี้ยุ้ยยังไม่ได้แปะมาให้นะคะเพราะยุ้ยไม่รู้ว่าคนสอนเขาจะรอจนครั้งสุดท้ายหรือเปล่าอะค่ะ โอเค10 โมงครึ่งแล้วนะคะกราบสวัสดีทุกท่านนะคะ วันนี้เป็นวันที่4ของการสัมมนานะคะเรามีการสัมมนาที่สนุกสนานมากนะคะในระหว่าง3วันที่ผ่านมาวันนี้จะเป็นวันที่4นะคะแล้วก็วันนี้จะมีเรื่องของ case study กรณีศึกษานะคะเดี๋ยวยุ้ยขอเริ่มอธิบายเคสก่อนนะคะเพื่อที่ว่าทุกท่านจะได้เข้าไปทำเคสได้ง่ายขึ้นนะคะเคสแรกจะเป็นเรื่องของธนาคารนะคะในสวีเดนนะคะเป็นเรื่องของ Green Bond Framework นะคะของธนาคารในสวีเดนท่านใดที่ยังไม่ได้ดาวน์โหลดเคสนะคะรบกวนดาวน์โหลดเคสได้ที่จากลิงก์นะคะยุ้ยก๊อปให้อีกทีนะคะจะได้เร็วๆแล้วก็เดี๋ยวจะพูดให้เลยนะคะโอเคนี่เคสที่1นะคะโอเคกรณีนี้นะคะพูดถึงธนาคารนะคะธนาคารนี้เป็นธนาคารที่เป็น Regional Saving Bank นะคะถ้าคิดง่ายๆก็คือเหมือนธนาคารออมสินนะคะซึ่งธนาคารนี้ตั้งมาแล้วประมาณ200ปีนะคะซึ่งจะมีหน้าที่ส่งเสริมการออมนะคะแล้วก็ทำประโยชน์นะคะเพื่อสังคมนะคะโดยที่สินค้านะคะ financial product ก็ง่ายๆเลยก็คือเป็น saving lending payment แล้วก็ insurance นะคะโดยฐานลูกค้าเนี่ยก็จะเป็นตั้งแต่private customer SME นะคะเป็น municipal นะคะแล้วก็ country council นะคะแล้วก็องค์กรต่างๆนะคะโดยที่ธนาคารนี้ค่ะมีความต้องการอย่างหนึ่งก็คือว่าที่จะช่วยเหลือทางด้านสังคมนะคะโดยที่เขาก็มีงานด้านสังคมหลายอย่างนะคะซึ่งสิ่งหนึ่งซึ่งเป็นหลักของธนาคารนี้ก็คือว่าเขาจะใช้คำว่าresponsible lending อะค่ะโดยที่ responsible lending ในที่นี้เนี่ยนะคะเขาคิดว่านะคะเขาจะใช้วิธีการแบบนี้ค่ะคือเขาต้องการให้ลูกค้าของเขาเองเนี่ยนำกระบวนการนี้มาใช้ด้วยฉะนั้นเนี่ยเขาก็จะ convince ลูกค้าโดยการที่นำเอาrisk assessment นะคะคือการวิเคราะห์ความเสี่ยงนะคะในหลายๆด้านของลูกค้ามาวิเคราะห์ว่าลูกค้ามีความเสี่ยงในด้านใดได้บ้างนะคะเช่นความเสี่ยงด้านคอร์รัปชันนะคะเรื่องเกี่ยวกับ human rights สิทธิมนุษยชนนะคะแล้วก็เรื่องเกี่ยวกับสภาพสิ่งแวดล้อมนะคะซึ่งอันนี้มันก็รวมถึงการที่เขาไปสัมพันธ์กับคู่ค้าต่างๆด้วยนะคะในแง่ของ subcontract นะคะแล้วก็สินค้าและบริการของเขาเนี่ยก็จะต้องส่งเสริมทางด้านสิ่งแวดล้อมด้วยเช่นกันนะคะโดยเขาเชื่อว่าถ้าเกิดลูกค้าเขาเนี่ยมองในด้านของความยั่งยืนนะคะก็จะทำให้สุดท้ายแล้วเนี่ยก็จะมีผลตอบแทนกลับมาที่ดีขึ้นนะคะซึ่งธนาคารนี้ก็มีการดำเนินงานอย่างน้อยๆ5อย่างนะคะก็คือเรื่องของการประหยัดไฟประหยัดกระดาษนะคะเรื่องของการให้การศึกษานะคะเรื่องของการส่งเสริมเรื่องของสิ่งแวดล้อมนะคะแล้วก็ธนาคารนี้เนี่ยนะคะเขาก็มี Green Bond Framework นะคะซึ่งจะล้อตาม Green Bond Principle 2018นะคะโดยที่ในนั้นเนี่ยค่ะเขาก็จะมีรายละเอียดให้นะคะว่าทั้งหมดเนี่ยล้อตามSDG อะไรบ้างนะคะซึ่งตัว Green Bond Framework ของเขาเนี่ยจะมีการปรับปรุงอัปเดตนะคะถ้าเกิดสถานการณ์ในตลาดเปลี่ยนแปลงหรือว่ามีการอัปเดตในก็ Green Bond Principle นะคะโดยที่ตัว Framework เนี้ย Green Bond Framework เนี่ยจะมีการรีวิวนะคะโดยบริษัทนะคะโดย external party นะคะซึ่ง framework นี้เนี่ยถ้าเกิดได้อนุมัติเรียบร้อยแล้วซึ่งอนุมัติเรียบร้อยแล้วเนี่ยจะสามารถใช้กับการออก senior unsecured debt นะคะหรือ seniorอันที่1คือ senior unsecured debt อันที่2คือ senior non preferred debt และอันที่3คือ cover bond นะคะซึ่ง framework นี้สามารถใช้ได้เลยในการออกบอนด์นะคะโดยบอนด์ที่ออกมาแล้วเนี่ยเงินที่ได้มาเนี่ยจะถูกนำไปใช้ให้กับโครงการต่างๆนะคะซึ่งจะเป็นตามนี้เลยค่ะ proceed เนี่ยสามารถใช้ได้ในการให้สินเชื่อกับโครงการหรือว่าเป็น refinance ก็ได้นะคะ in part หรือ in full ก็ได้กับ eligible green loan นะคะซึ่งตรงนี้ก็จะล้อตาม SDG นะคะซึ่งตรงนี้ธนาคารนี้นะคะเขาก็จะexercise judgment ของเขาเองนะคะในการวิเคราะห์ตัว eligible green loan นะคะหลังจากนั้นแล้วเนี่ยถ้า green loan ได้รับการพิจารณาเรียบร้อยแล้วนะคะก็จะเข้าไป list อยู่ในGreen Register นะคะในหน้านี้เนี่ยเขาก็จะบอกให้ว่า ถ้าเกิดเข้าข่ายโครงการนี้แล้วเนี่ยจะมีแคตตากรีใดบ้างนะคะก็จะมี sustainable agriculture มี green building นะคะซึ่งมันก็จะบอกเขาก็จะบอกเรื่องของกับว่ามันไปลิงก์กับ SDG ใดบ้างนะคะในรายละเอียดตรงนี้ก็สามารถนำไปใช้ในการทำเคสได้นะคะแล้วก็ทั้งหมดเนี่ยประมาณ6 category นะคะที่สามารถจัดได้เข้าสู่ในกลุ่มของ Green Bond นี้นะคะ selection criteria นะคะของ eligible green loan นะคะอันนี้เป็นกระบวนการที่สำคัญนะคะในการคัดเลือกนะคะโครงการที่จะเข้าร่วมสู่ในกระบวนการนี้นะคะซึ่งถ้าเกิดเข้า meet criteria แล้วนะคะก็จะสามารถเข้าไปอยู่ในgreen register นะคะโดยในกระบวนการที่จะเลือกนั้นเนี่ยจะมี green committee นะคะเป็นคนเลือก green committee เนี่ยจะมีการกำหนดนะคะว่าจะต้องมีคุณสมบัติอะไรบ้างนะคะแล้วก็จะมีการอัปเดตตัว framework นะคะแล้วก็มีการรายงานผลนะคะของgreen project นะคะให้กับประชาชนทราบนะคะซึ่งเขาก็จะแบ่งเป็นว่าถ้าเป็นโครงการใหม่นะคะที่เป็น corporate loan โครงการใหม่ก็จะมี criteria อะไรบ้างนะคะแล้วก็โดยที่ Credit Officer นะคะก็จะเป็นคนทำการประเมินนะคะloan application นะคะว่ามี criteria ในนั้นไหมนะคะแล้วถ้าเกิดเข้า criteria แล้วก็จะสามารถเข้าไป register อยู่ใน green registration ได้นะคะส่วนอีกข้อหนึ่งก็คือเรื่องของโลนปัจจุบันนะคะ corporate loan ปัจจุบันถ้าเกิดว่าจะเข้า criteria เขาก็จะดึงมาเป็น pool ของ eligible green loan ไว้นะคะแล้วก็จะมาวิเคราะห์ว่ามีคุณสมบัติครบตามนั้นไหมถ้าเกิดครบตามนั้นนะคะก็จะสามารถที่จะ register เข้าไปใน green register ได้ที่พูดไป2เคสนั้นเป็น corporate bond corporate loan นะคะอีกกรณีหนึ่งก็คือเป็นprivate green loan นะคะซึ่งตรงนี้เขากำลังอยู่ในช่วงของการพัฒนาระบบอยู่นะคะก็คงจะนำมาใช้ได้ในเร็วนี้นะคะโดยที่ถ้าเกิดเข้าสู่กระบวนการแล้วระบบเรียบร้อยแล้วนะคะได้รับการพิจารณาแล้วก็จะเข้ามา register อยู่ใน green register เช่นกันนะคะผู้ที่รับผิดชอบของตัวอัปเดตตัว green register ก็คือ finance department นะคะแล้วก็มี head of finance เนี่ยค่ะเป็นผู้ที่keep tag นะคะของข้อมูลใน data นี้ว่าup to date นะคะของธนาคารนี้นะคะเขาก็ manage green bond ทั้งหมดเนี่ยเป็นระดับ portfolio level นะคะซึ่งเขาจะ keep tag นะคะว่าทุกอันยัง eligible นะคะใน portfolio ตลอดเวลาแล้วเขาก็มีสิทธิ์ที่จะดึงเข้าหรือนำเข้ามาใส่ใหม่ได้นะคะได้ตลอดเวลาตราบใดที่ยังdeclare ว่าเป็นกรีนอยู่นะคะซึ่งในส่วนของfunding ที่ยังเหลืออยู่นะคะที่ยังไม่ได้นำไปใช้ให้กับโครงการต่างๆเนี่ยเขาก็จะนำไปลงทุนตาม internal requirement ที่กำหนดไว้ในเรื่องของ liquidity reserve นะคะซึ่งอันนี้ก็คือเขาจะต้องมีการกำหนดว่าถ้าเงินที่ยังไม่ได้เอาไปใช้เนี่ยจะต้องบริหารจัดการอย่างไรนะคะหน้านี้เป็นหน้าของ reporting นะคะในหน้า reporting เนี่ยเขาก็จะบอกว่าเขาก็ต้องมีการ report นะคะอย่างสม่ำเสมอซึ่งในการรีพอร์ตอย่างสม่ำเสมอนั้นอย่างน้อยก็ต้องปีละ1ครั้งนะคะหรือจนกว่าจะไม่มี green bond เนี่ยอยู่ในพอร์ตโฟลิโอแล้วนะคะในสิ่งที่รีพอร์ตก็จะมีอะไรบ้างมี use of proceed นะคะมี impact reporting นะคะว่าไปมีส่งผลต่อสิ่งแวดล้อมอย่างไรนะคะพยายามที่จะให้ข้อมูลมากที่สุดเท่าที่จะทำได้นะคะแล้วก็อย่างที่เรียนก็คือว่าเป็นในระดับของ portfolio level นะคะโดยเขาเมื่อกี้ตามที่เห็นว่ามี6เซกเตอร์ค่ะเขาก็จะรีพอร์ตตามเซกเตอร์ตามนี้นะคะก็จะแบ่งไปว่าแต่ละเซกเตอร์ต้องรีพอร์ตอะไรบ้างนะคะ แล้วก็เขาก็มีกระบวนการของการทำตัว verify นะคะแล้วก็ external review นะคะซึ่งเขาก็บอกว่าสามารถที่จะไปดาวน์โหลดตัว external second opinion ได้นะคะในเว็บไซต์อันนี้ก็จบเคสที่1นะคะหวังว่าคงจะช่วยให้อ่านได้เร็วขึ้นนะคะส่วนเคสที่2จะเป็นเคสของ Islamic Development Bank นะคะเดี๋ยวยุ้ยใส่ลิงก์ให้อีกทีเผื่อท่านที่มาเพิ่งเข้ามานะคะโอเคส่งลิงก์ให้แล้วนะคะอันนี้เป็นลิงก์ของ Islamic Development Bank นะคะเคสนี้เนี่ยเอกสารจะค่อนข้างเยอะนะคะโดยที่เคสนี้นะคะ Islamic Development Bank ISDB นะคะเขาก็เป็น Multilateral Development Bank นะคะก็ถ้าคิดง่ายๆก็อาจจะเป็นคล้ายๆกับธนาคารอิสลามบ้านเราอะค่ะแต่เขาอยู่ในกรอบใหญ่กว่านะคะเขาก็ประกอบด้วยประเทศทั้งหมด57ประเทศนะคะที่เป็นเมมเบอร์ของเขานะคะแล้วเขาก็จะปฏิบัติตามนะคะ UN General Assembly นะคะโดยที่วัตถุประสงค์หลักของเขาเนี่ยเขาจะต้องการที่จะส่งเสริมในเรื่องของการพัฒนาด้านสิ่งแวดล้อมและด้านเศรษฐกิจในประเทศที่เป็นมุสลิมนะคะแล้วก็สังคมต่างๆทั่วโลกนะคะสิ่งหนึ่งซึ่งธนาคารนี้ให้ความสำคัญก็คือเรื่องของการที่จะ collaborate นะคะร่วมมือกันนะคะโดยเฉพาะในประเทศมุสลิมนะคะแล้วก็หวังว่าจะให้ทุกประเทศเนี่ยสามารถมีตัว SDG goal ได้นะคะโดยธนาคารอิสลามิกแบงก์นี้เนี่ยนะคะเขาก็มีการ issue ตัวซูกุกบอนนะคะซูกุกกรีนบอนนะคะโดยใช้ sustainable finance framework นะคะซึ่งทำให้เขาเนี่ยสามารถที่จะ diversify ตัว source of funding นะคะแล้วก็สามารถนำไปทำให้ส่งเสริมให้เกิดการพัฒนาเพื่อความยั่งยืนได้ในอนาคตนะคะแล้วก็ส่งเสริมความโปร่งใสนะคะโดยที่ตัว ISDB เนี่ยได้มีการพัฒนาด้านความยั่งยืนเนี่ยในหลายๆกรอบตามที่เห็นอยู่ในกล่องสี่เหลี่ยมนี้นะคะซึ่งเนื่องจากว่า ISDB เนี่ยมีประเทศสมาชิกอยู่มากกว่า50ประเทศนะคะเขาก็ต้องพยายามที่จะปรับปรุง adjust นะคะ objective ของเขาเนี่ยให้เหมาะสมตรงกับประเทศที่จะขอกู้อะค่ะนะคะซึ่งเขาก็จะจัดตั้งด้าน community practice ขึ้นมาเพื่อที่จะให้มีการแลกเปลี่ยนความรู้ raise awareness นะคะแล้วก็ส่งเสริมร่วมมือกันนะคะเพื่อที่จะช่วยทั้งในด้านของ technical แล้วก็ด้านของ financing ด้วยโดยเขาเนี่ยพยายามทำตัวให้เป็นทั้ง facilitator นะคะแล้วก็เป็น catalyst นะคะในด้านของการที่จะพัฒนาเพื่อความยั่งยืนนะคะโดยให้ความร่วมมือทั้งด้าน financing แล้วก็ด้าน technical นะคะจะสังเกตได้ว่าเนี่ยเขาก็สิ่งที่เขาจะทำเนี่ยนะคะก็คือว่าเขาจะ support ประเทศสมาชิกนะคะให้บรรลุ SDG goal โดย SDG goal นี่ก็จะเป็น1ถึง13นะคะ SDG ที่1ถึง13 SDG ที่131ถึง11นะคะแล้วก็ SDG ที่13แล้วก็ SDG ที่16นะคะโดยที่หวังว่าทุกประเทศเนี่ยจะมีตัว SDG goal เนี่ยภายในปี2030ข้อที่2นะคะเขาก็จะ mainstream นะคะ strategic initiative นะคะโดยที่เขาจะพยายามนำเรื่องของผู้หญิงนะคะแล้วก็เรื่องของวัยรุ่นเด็กนะคะพัฒนาด้านนี้นะคะเพื่อให้ทุกคนมีความเท่าเทียมกันนะคะลดความเหลื่อมล้ำนะคะแล้วก็ส่งเสริมให้เกิดความเสถียรภาพในประเทศนะคะโดยที่ก็ยังมุ่งหวังเรื่องของเกี่ยวกับ climate ด้วยฉะนั้นมันจะเป็นการ mix กันระหว่างด้านสังคมและสิ่งแวดล้อมนะคะโดยทาง ISDB เนี่ยเขากำหนด 10-year strategy ไว้นะคะซึ่งใน 10-year strategy เนี่ยก็มี strategic framework ก็ตามรูปภาพนี้เลยนะคะโดยหวังว่าจะมีตัว SDG goal ภายในปี 2030 นะคะโดยเขามี three strategic objective คือ inclusive นะคะ connectivity แล้วก็ global development of the Islamic finance sector นะคะตามรูปที่1ในกล่องนี้เลยค่ะเขาได้มีการจัดตั้งนะคะ President 5-year program ขึ้นมานะคะซึ่งตรงนี้เขาก็จะเข้ามาช่วยเหลือนะคะประเทศต่างๆนะคะเพื่อที่จะให้ทุกประเทศเนี่ยสามารถบรรลุ SDG goal ได้นะคะจะสังเกตได้ว่าทาง ISDB เนี่ยค่ะเขาก็จะพยายามทำทุกเรื่องที่เกี่ยวกับการพัฒนาประเทศนะคะแล้วก็ในการทำด้านนี้เนี่ยเขาก็จะพิจารณาโครงการต่างๆที่ล้อไปตามที่มีอินไลน์กับ10 ปี strategy ของเขานะคะแล้วก็PSP 5P ก็คือตัวนี้นะคะ President 5-year program นะคะแล้วก็ target ของแต่ละประเทศนั้นๆด้วยนะคะซึ่งจะสังเกตได้ว่าเขาก็จะครอบคลุมถึงหลายๆด้านการพัฒนาในแต่ละประเทศนะคะอันนี้ก็สามารถดูรายละเอียดได้เลยเอกสารตรงนี้จะค่อนข้างเยอะนะคะตรงนี้เขาก็กล่าวถึงว่าในโครงการเพื่อการพัฒนาเด็กนะคะเขาก็จะทุกๆปีเนี่ย ISDB จะแบ่งสรรประมาณ 8% ของงบประมาณเนี่ยค่ะไปส่งเสริมด้านเรื่องของโครงการที่พัฒนาเด็กนะคะโดยโครงการพัฒนาเด็กเนี่ยเขาก็มีจัดตั้ง strategy ของเขานะคะเป็น Youth Development Strategy 2019-2025 ซึ่งจะเกี่ยวเนื่องกับเรื่องของการศึกษาเรื่องของการพัฒนาด้านเศรษฐกิจนะคะแล้วความร่วมมือต่างๆนะคะซึ่งเขาก็อย่างที่เรียนค่ะก็คือเขาจะทำด้านเกี่ยวกับด้านผู้หญิงกับด้านเด็กเป็นหลักด้วยนะคะแล้วเขาก็จะมีด้าน policy ของด้านผู้หญิงนะคะ women empowerment policy ด้วยนะคะเพื่อที่จะให้มั่นใจว่าผู้หญิงในประเทศมุสลิมเนี่ยได้รับสิทธิเท่าเทียมกันนะคะแล้วก็ข้อ4เนี่ยก็เป็นเรื่องของความร่วมมือทางด้านเทคนิคอลนะคะเพื่อจะให้ทุกคนเนี่ยสามารถมีความรู้นะคะมีความสามารถความเชี่ยวชาญนะคะแล้วก็นำสู่ตัว SDG goal ได้นะคะข้อ5เนี่ยเขาก็จะเป็นกรอบความร่วมมือกับทางด้าน multilateral agency ต่างๆนะคะเพื่อให้เกิด sustainable infrastructure นะคะเขาก็ร่วมมือกับทาง UN นะคะร่วมกับ multilateral development bank นะคะอย่างเช่น World Bank นะคะ IFC ADB นะคะตรงนี้เขาก็กำหนดจัดตั้งกองทุนขึ้นมากองทุนหนึ่งนะคะในปี 2018 นะคะเป็นประมาณ$500 ล้านนะคะซึ่งเงินก้อนนี้จะให้กับสตาร์ทอัพกับ SME นะคะที่จะมีการนำไปใช้เพื่อให้เกิดพัฒนาให้ meet SDG ที่กำหนดตามนี้นะคะซึ่งอันนี้จะเป็น crowdfunding platform นะคะในกรอบของตัว Sustainable Finance Framework เนี่ยนะคะเขาก็กำหนดว่าใน Framework เนี่ยจะประกอบด้วย4นะคะอย่างที่1คือ Green Bond Principle นะคะอันที่2คือ Social Bond Principle Green Bond Principle นี่2018 Social Bond Principle ก็2018นะคะแล้วก็ Sustainability Bond Guideline นะคะโดยที่ในการ issue ของเขาเนี่ยเขาก็จะกำหนดว่าจะต้องกำหนดอย่างไรบ้างก็มี4หัวข้อนี้ก็คือเรื่องของการนำเงินไปใช้นะคะเรื่องของ evaluation นะคะเรื่องของการ manage ตัว proceed แล้วก็ของการ reporting นะคะจะสังเกตได้ว่าเขาแบ่งเงินออกเป็น2ก้อนนะคะก้อนหนึ่งที่เรียกว่า green sukuk อีกก้อนหนึ่งคือ sustainability sukuk ซึ่ง green sukuk เนี่ยจะใช้สำหรับ Green Project เท่านั้นนะคะในขณะที่ Sustainability Sukuk เนี่ยจะใช้ทั้ง Green Project แล้วก็ Social Project นะคะซึ่งตรงพารากราฟนี้ก็บอกว่าอย่างนั้นเหมือนกันค่ะว่าเป็นการ mix ระหว่าง Green กับ Social นะคะแล้วเขาก็บอกว่าถ้าเกิดว่าในกรณีที่มีเฉพาะ Social Project นะคะแล้ว ถ้าเกิดมีแต่ social project นะคะก็ยังสามารถ classify เป็น sustainability สุกุได้นะคะตราบใดที่มีการ integrate ตัว climate risk นะคะซึ่งเขากำหนดไว้ในตัว selection process นะคะคือถ้าเกิด meet ยังมี criteria ของ climate risk อยู่ก็สามารถที่จะ classify เป็นประเภท2ได้นะคะทีนี้เรามาดูนะคะว่าใน Green Project เนี่ยมีอะไรบ้างนะคะเขาก็จะแบ่งเป็นประเภทให้นะคะซึ่งอันนี้ก็เขาก็จะมีรายละเอียดให้ตามนี้นะคะในของ Green Project นะคะแล้วก็อันนี้เป็น Social Project นะคะเมื่อวันก่อน2 วันก่อนมีการพูดถึง exclusion criteria นะคะอันนี้ก็มีการพูดถึง exclusion criteria ของโครงการใน ISDB เช่นกันนะคะโดยที่ ISDB เนื่องจากเป็น Islamic Bank นะคะเขาก็จะเป็น Sharia นะคะ compliant นะคะทีนี้ในเรื่องของ selection and evaluation process นะคะเขาก็จะมีกระบวนการนะคะโดยกระบวนการต่างๆเนี่ยก็เขาก็จะมีข้อกำหนดนะคะซึ่งข้อกำหนดเนี่ยก็จะ inline กับ ILO Labor Standard นะคะแล้วก็จะล้อตามกฎหมายของประเทศนั้นๆด้วยนะคะแล้วก็จะต้องเป็นไปตามไกด์ไลน์ของ ISDB นะทางนโยบายของ ISDB ด้วยเช่นกันนะคะอย่างที่เมื่อกี้เรียนนะคะว่าถ้าเกิดเป็น social bond นะคะอย่างน้อยๆก็จะต้องมีตัว climate risk identification กับ management อยู่ในนั้นนะคะถึงจะสามารถจัดเป็นกลุ่มที่2ได้นะคะในเรื่องนี้ก็เขาก็จะมี environmental กับ social safeguard นะคะ ESS policy ซึ่งอันนี้เป็น policy ซึ่งทุกองค์กรด้านพัฒนาค่ะเขาจะใช้กันนะคะซึ่ง ISDB ก็จะล้อตาม ESS ตัว policy นี้ด้วยค่ะเพื่อที่จะให้ส่งเสริมทางด้านสังคมและก็ด้านสิ่งแวดล้อมนะคะเขาก็จะบอกว่าตัว ISDB due diligence process เนี่ยค่ะจะต้องมั่นใจว่ามันจะไม่จะคือจะส่งเสริมให้เกิดการให้เกิดส่งเสริมให้เกิดความยั่งยืนนะคะทั้งในด้านของเรื่องของสังคมเศรษฐกิจและก็สิ่งแวดล้อมแน่ๆนะคะนี่คือหลักการของเขาเลยในเรื่องของตัว ESS policy ส่วนหน้านี้เขาก็จะพูดเรื่องของ sustainable ตัว selection process นะคะโดยที่เขาจะจัดตั้งตัว sustainable finance task force ขึ้นมา SFTF นะคะซึ่งตัวนี้จะมีหน้าที่สำหรับในการที่จะคัดเลือกนะคะแล้วก็ evaluate นะคะallocation process ต่างๆนะคะว่ามี criteria หรือเปล่านะคะถ้าเกิดว่าโครงการเนี่ยได้รับการคัดเลือกแล้วเนี่ยนะคะก็จะได้รับการ allocate นะคะเงินจากทั้ง Green สุกุกได้รับ allocate นะคะตาม Green สุกุกหรือ Sustainability สุกุกนะคะซึ่งตรงนี้ก็สุดท้าย Final Review ก็จะอยู่ที่ตัวคณะกรรมการนี้นะคะ Task Force นี้นะคะแล้วหลังจากนั้นแล้วถ้าได้รับการอนุมัติแล้วก็จะเข้าไปจะไป Register อยู่ใน GSS สุกุก Registrar นะคะแล้วก็จะมีการ Monitoring นะคะ Evaluate นะคะโครงการต่างๆนะคะโดยโครงการพวกนี้ก็จะต้องมีการดำเนินการต่อเนื่องไปเรื่อยๆนะคะไม่มีการหยุดนะคะต้องเป็น monitoring ตลอดนะคะในพารากราฟสุดท้ายเขาบอกว่าถ้าเกิดมีโครงการใดโครงการหนึ่งนะคะไม่เข้าเกณฑ์นะคะทางเขาก็จะสามารถทางโครงการเนี่ยก็จะสามารถที่จะมีการนำโครงการใหม่มาปรับใช้แทนได้นะคะเอาโครงการใหม่มาใส่แทนนะคะโดยในพารากราฟถัดไปเนี่ยเขาก็จะบอกว่าตัว task force เนี่ยมีหน้าที่อะไรบ้างนะคะแล้วถัดมาก็คือเรื่องของ management ของ proceed นะคะในการ management ของ proceed นะคะโครงการทั้ง2กรุ๊ปเนี่ยทั้ง Green สุกุกและก็ Sustainable สุกุกเนี่ยจะต้องมา register อยู่ในตัว GSS สุกุก Registrar นะคะแล้วก็ เงินที่ได้รับการอนุมัติแล้วค่ะก็จะต้องถูกเอียร์มาร์คของแต่ละโปรเจกต์นะคะส่วนเงินที่ยังไม่ได้ allocate นะคะก็จะต้องเข้าสู่จะต้องถูกนำไป follow ตัวliquidity policy เหมือนเดิมเหมือนกับแบงค์ที่แล้วนะคะเนื่องจากว่าแบงค์ ISDB เนี่ยเป็น Islamic Bank นะคะเขาก็จะต้องทุกโครงการก็จะต้องเป็น Sharia Compliance นะคะแล้วก็จะนำมารวมกันให้กลายเป็นใช้ร่วมกันกับ ESG นะคะ criteria นะคะด้วยตัว register นะคะตัว GSS สุกุเนี่ยจะต้องมีการรีวิวนะคะโดยในสิ่งที่เขาจะต้องมีการระบุนะคะรีวิวก็จะมีเอกสารมีรายละเอียดตามนี้นะคะแล้วก็มีการรีพอร์ตนะคะโดยการรีพอร์ตเนี้ยก็จะเป็นอย่างที่เรียนนะคะว่าส่วนใหญ่ก็จะเป็นรีพอร์ตปีละ1 ครั้งนะคะซึ่งคนที่รีพอร์ตเนี่ย SS ตัว Task Force มีหน้าที่นะคะในการที่จะรีพอร์ตบอนด์ต่างๆนะคะโลนต่างๆที่อยู่ในตัว GSS Register นี้นะคะโดยที่ในสิ่งที่รีพอร์ตนี่ก็จะต้องบอกว่าเงินที่ได้มาเนี่ยไปเข้าโครงการใดบ้างนะคะแล้วก็มี Impact อย่างไรกับด้านสังคมและสิ่งแวดล้อมนะคะโดยที่มีcriteria นะคะ matrix ตามที่เห็นในภาพนี้นะคะอันนี้เป็น green criteria นะคะแล้วก็อันนี้เป็น social นะคะแล้วก็เขาก็จะพูดถึงเซสชันสุดท้ายก็เป็นเรื่องของ external review นะคะโดยที่สามารถที่จะไปดาวน์โหลดในเว็บไซต์ได้เช่นกันนะคะโอเคอันนี้เป็น2เคสนะคะที่จะทำในวันนี้นะคะตอนนี้คือ10:57แล้วนะคะท่านใดที่ยังไม่ได้ดาวน์โหลดเอกสารนะคะรบกวนดาวน์โหลดนะคะแล้วเดี๋ยวยุ้ยจะเทิร์นฟลอร์ให้กับทางยุโรปแล้วนะคะแล้วถ้าอย่างนั้นเนี่ยเราก็จะไปทำ Q&A น้องวันโว่เราพร้อมไหมคะเราทำ Q&A เลยได้ไหมคะ Berhard are you here Berhard Christine
Yes, I am here. Good morning.
Yes can we do the morning quiz
Yes.
Yes okay in that case can we start with the first question
I think that David and Matthew is here as well. So.
Okay, good morning, David, Matthew, Christine, and Berhard. Morning. I hope you now is almost 7 o'clock, right, in Europe?
It's almost 6 o'clock. Yeah.
Almost 6 o'clock. So still very early. Okay, can I turn the floor to you so that you can comment on the morning quiz? Thank you.
I think it's Christine is over to you, no?
Yes, this is a social bond, so maybe you can take this one.
All right. Okay. Sure. No problem.
I will try to get my camera working.
All right. I was going to turn on mine. All right.
To read for you?
No.
Okay.
No. I can see it. So the first question is aggregating impacts to the portfolio level when explaining social bond impacts should never be done. So again, aggregating impacts to the portfolio level when explaining. Let's see. I mean, I think we still have to be ready for 30, no? How many participants we have now?
Uh, ท่านใดที่ยังไม่ได้เข้าอะค่ะรบกวนเข้านิดนึงนะคะตอนนี้เรามีแค่we are 26 now
All right, so we are 26, that's perfect. And yes, it is fast, so you can aggregate. All right, let's look at the next one. So all SDG bonds are sustainability bonds. Let's see. All right, so we have 26, oh, wait, 27, 29. Okay, so it seems like there's more people are joining. I think we have everybody. We have 32 people voting, and it is indeed false. That's correct. Yes. So not all SDG bonds are sustainable bonds. So that's correct. You can go to the next slide, no problem. So give 4 examples of social projects. So here, I guess you can just type in whatever. So there are no choices. Of course, there are many good responses, not only one. I mean, not only 4. Yeah, I'm gonna wait a little bit.
Everybody support the affordable housing project.
It looks like for sure, yes. Okay, so I'm looking at, in the meantime, I'm looking at some of the responses. So, I mean, the green project, I saw a green project that's probably not a social project, so that's one I would say no. Yeah, jobs, employment creation is definitely one. Affordable housing, of course, is one. Education is also good. Jobs for me, living below poverty. So, I mean, I guess you have to link it to projects category, the living below poverty. Maybe, I mean, maybe you can link it to SDG1. Maybe that's good view. Like elderly kids, certainly, women empowerment very much so. I mean, the aging society, I mean, that's certainly a social issue, but you have to actually link it to, I mean, you have to make a social project out of it, right? A social project category out of it. So I think, yeah, I think we're 27. It's quite good. Yeah, so they're good. You can go to the next one. They're good examples like water, certainly education, as I mentioned earlier. Good. Thank you very much for your participation.
You want me to share the screen now, Ursula?
Please, but Christine, your voice is quite low. Can you?
So I will increase it.
Okay,
I have a
thank
different mic today, so I hope it will work better.
Can you bring the microphone close to your mouth, please?
Is it better now?
Yeah, it's much better now. Thank you.
Okay, so you can hear me now?
Yes, I think it's okay. Yes, it's fine. I can hear you at least.
So then I will share the presentation. So now you can see it.
It's still loading.
It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. While waiting, we will inform everybody that the breakout will be 20 minutes each. Okay, I turn the floor to you. Your slide is here.
Yes, okay, thank you. So good morning again. I hope you are well and that you have you find the workshop useful so far. So we are actually more than half the way through. We have talked about both social issues and green bonds. And today you will be doing parts of the work. But I listened in yesterday as well, and I have to say that you are asking and all through the week you have been asking some really good questions, and that is of course encouraging to us. Let me see if I can change my slide. Yes, so today we will be having the case studies that Rachada was about to talk about, one on green bonds and one on sustainability bonds. But before that, we have some input from circular economy from CISRO, and then infrastructure and aging society from ISSD. We will talk about agriculture tomorrow morning, so I just skipped through them very quickly. So we will come back to them tomorrow morning. So circular economy, to start with this one. It has gained more and more attention the last years. So it is about going from a linear to a circular economy. So from a take, make, and dispose economy with access to low-cost resources, and then going to an economy with a focus not only on economic growth, but also on the access to low-cost resources, but also on the society-wide benefits. And then with a gradual decoupling between the economic activity and the consumption of what we know are finite resources. And circular economy is based on some principles. One of them is to design out waste and pollution, and also to keep products and material in use. But circular economy is also a way to achieve the sustainability development goals. It relates to several of them, and to mention a few, the SDG 12 on sustainable consumption. Of course, if you produce less waste, you have a more sustainable consumption. And also number 13 on climate change. Again, if you are producing less because you are wasting less, you will also produce less greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, number 14 related to oceans. For instance, less plastic waste going to the ocean. And single-use plastic is really a good example on a linear economy. You use it once and then you throw it. And I think Asia has seen quite a lot of that. It's also crucial to achieve the goals in the Paris Agreement, as we reduce emissions when we are reusing instead of producing new items. And this is, of course, emphasized by the fact that a lot more of the greenhouse gas emissions are going into production of goods than what is linked to the use of those products. And what we have seen is that finance is playing a role in accelerating this transition by facilitating finance for businesses and projects that are applying circular economy business models. So what is circular economy? We have discussed that a little bit, and the Green Bond Principles have identified some eligible projects categories with elements of circular economy. So they mention the eco-efficient and circular economy adapted products, the pollution prevention and control category, clean transportation, sustainable water, and wastewater management. So the pollution prevention and control category is to a large degree about handling of waste. Handling of waste in a good way is expensive and difficult. It's much cheaper to throw your waste in the gutter or in the ocean. And I think if you look at this picture here, this is from a Thai beach. This is, of course, not how we want them to look. But this is also indeed a big waste of resources that should be utilized. Or better, of course, not to produce this waste in the first place. And if you look at this circle here, you see that we have resources going into the manufacturing of processes. And then we have the consumption and use. And then we have either waste or recycling. So the less we take out here in this end, the more we can use again and the less resources we use. So this is really a good example of the circular economy. So we have seen more and more green bonds now addressing circular economy projects, and several financial institutions have then seen the need to develop a guideline. So this circular economy finance guidelines was developed by several financial institutions, and it's worth looking into. It aims to promote and develop the role finance can play in the circular economy. So they have a similar definition, saying that in a circular economy, the value of products and materials is maintained for as long as possible, and that waste and resources are minimized. And when a product reaches the end of its life, it's used again to create further value. It also emphasizes that it can bring major economic benefits. I think we think about it as a big cost, and of course it is costly, but it can also bring indeed innovation and job creation. So they consider recycling as a circular economy business model that recovers value from the end-of-life materials and products. Then they also mention some possible investments related to circular economy. It can be companies or projects that substitute virgin materials with secondary and recycled materials. For instance, when you are producing plastics, your starting point is fossil fuels. Or when you produce paper, your starting point is wood, so both are virgin materials. But what we want to do is to replace as much as possible of this virgin material with recycled materials. They also mentioned companies that eliminate or reduce input of hazardous materials and design for easy assembly and repair to facilitate recycling or reuse. And I think if we look at the iPhones, for instance, it's a good example of not being easy to disassembly and repair. If your battery is gone, you have to buy a new phone. So I think this has to change at some point. And then, of course, we have also material and resource recovery. Finally, they mentioned that impact assessments should be considered so that you consider all the impacts of your projects along the value chain, for instance, by using life cycle assessments. And also recognize that social impacts like human rights and gender equality should be included in overarching ESG policies. They also mentioned some exclusions, and that is that waste projects that use landfill techniques without separating out what can be recycled should not be supported. You should take out as much as possible before you finally dispose of it. And that projects that monetize byproducts of fossil fuels and create lock-in for fossil fuel usage. These are also projects that shouldn't be supported. So I think we will look at one example, and we have taken here Electrolux. I don't know if you know about it. It is a global company headquartered in Stockholm. It is specializing on household products like refrigerators, cookers, and so on. They issued a green bond framework in 2019, and we did an SBO on this one. They have several project categories, but two of them are linked to or can be said to be part of circular economy. The first one is eco-efficient and or circular economy adapted products. And they say that they will support the improvement of product performance and efficiency, and manufacturing equipment with energy efficiency at least 15% better than the average of current products, and also to support R&D of products with improved energy or water efficiency. And that to be eligible, they have to improve the energy with at least 15%. So then our comments was that focusing on 15% energy efficiency is good. It can be seen as ambitious, also taking into account that their products are already efficient compared to their competitors. What we also mentioned is that sort of a pitfall that they didn't have any water efficiency thresholds. But their response to this was that due to varying market requirements, this is a bit hard. They say that products will be fossil-free, but that we should be aware of potential lock-in if there are investments in fossil fuel manufacturing equipment. So we then rated this particular project category as medium to dark green. And the second one I want to mention is the pollution and prevention control category, where they say they will support investment in manufacturing equipment related to development and production of recycled materials, and R&D also on recycled materials. And then we comment that waste recycling is essential, and it's essential to achieve a low carbon society and is a part of a long-term solution. But also that any activity like recycling will entail some emissions, and that you should be managing these processes closely. And that even though it's a good thing to recycle plastics, they are still fossil fuel based, and also in the end use, the products can lead to a lock-in of emissions through plastic dependency. And that sourcing of recycled materials can lead to increased emissions, and that you should source as much as possible. And then, of course, conduct life cycle assessments to mitigate risks. And we also rated this one medium to dark green. We have some more examples, but I think I will leave now the presentation to you, Bernard, so that we have time to go through the case. And if we have time, we can go through more examples tomorrow.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kristin. I think it would be great if you could just continue the slides.
Okay, I will do that.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Great to hear that you had a great session yesterday together with ISD. And today we're gonna cover a lot of aspects that we looked into in our first 2 days, and then yesterday with ISD. We will have 2 case studies. One is the Sparebanken Skåne, which is a green financing framework. And then we have a second case with Islamic Development Bank together with ISD. So this one here is really to kind of sharpen the understanding of you for the green bond principles. So we will look into the alignment of the principles of the framework with the principles, and we will look into the various pitfalls and strengths that come with such a framework. And that is really the purpose of the exercise and what we will do in the breakout groups. If you would like to see the green bond framework, you can see it here for your download. I'm not sure if you can click that link in the presentation, but if not, you can probably just copy that text here or just Google it. It's all publicly available online.
Berhard, we already copied this download to the chat box this morning before you come.
Perfect, great. So then I see you're well ahead of me. That's great and very efficient. Then we will dive into the framework now by giving you a little bit of a background so that everybody is on the same page. And then we will start the breakout groups. We will have 4 breakout groups, as you might know. All of us will join the 4 breakout groups, the various breakout groups, and then we are going to be there as guidance for questions. But we would like you to have an open discussion. You can turn on your video to have a discussion amongst each other, so that we produce an output, and then one of the group members can present back and discuss the findings of the group in the bigger group. But before we start the first case study, let me just tell you a little bit about the framework so that we all know. Kristin, could you go to the next slide? So The first element of the use of the green bond principles would be the use of proceeds, and also Sparbank Skåne has defined the use of proceeds. They will finance. They will use it also for refinancing of the loans that they have identified, and they will do this with due care that they have put in place as a bank. Next slide, please. They have defined under the use of proceeds the various green bond categories. So in this case, it includes agriculture, renewable energy, energy efficiency, sustainable transportation, and waste management, and have set out a couple of examples and potential eligible projects. So for the sustainable agriculture category, they have as eligible defined that they include organic farming, which has to be certified against the EU standards. For the renewable energy, that would not be all the renewable energy that is out there, which as you probably know, can be quite a lot. In this case, it is wind and solar. For energy efficiency, they have projects that are at least 25% better than before. And reduction processes that are, or efficiency improvement processes that are associated with technology, with district heating, infrastructure, and so on. With regards to transportation, they are aiming at including fossil-free vehicles, which would be electric or biofuel. They also would include potentially railways, bicycle, pedestrian infrastructure, and so on. And so there's really this focus on either public transportation and non-motorized transport, in addition to the zero-emission vehicle investments. And the last one would be the waste management category, where they are having various like waste management and pollution prevention projects included, and energy efficient waste to energy projects as well. Okay, next slide, please. The second pillar would be the selection process that Sparbank Skåne has put in place. They have put in place a green committee that is making decisions when it comes up to the loans. They have a selection process put in place to define the various projects, to establish the green loan pool. As you can see, it is identified by a credit office. The pool is then, after this has been identified, presented to the Green Committee, and then they are eventually approved, and then they're put in place, and together with the Green Bond. They have a green register that is following these selected projects, so that they're having sufficient coverage of this project pool with a green bond. Next slide, please. With regard to the management of proceeds, the green bonds are managed on portfolio level. They will be kept track of in the portfolio. They can, of course, remove or add projects when necessary. That means that they might become ineligible over time. They might be refinanced, or other reasons might occur, so that they're having a need to replace various projects. So they're keeping track of that. But they, of course, also have always some unallocated proceeds that are not invested yet. And in the meantime, they are using their own liquidity reserve to manage these unallocated proceeds. That was the third pillar. And then the last pillar, Christine, would be the reporting pillar. The reporting they commit to is on an annual basis. They report on the website to cover both the allocation of the proceeds, meaning describing what they've been allocated to, what has been used for financing and refinancing, the total amounts, and others. But they also commit to reporting on the impact level. So that will be done on various indicators, as you can see on the next slide. So they listed out a couple of indicators per project category that they will include in their annual reporting. So for example, in the agriculture space, they have crop land in hectare, basically, what will be financed. They have organic farming certification scheme that's been chosen. For buildings, they're choosing energy performance certificates. They're using the energy usage. They're having, of course, sometimes certifications for their buildings. So that is also what they're going to be reporting. They have renewable energy capacity. They have renewable energy distribution. They have annual energy saved. For the transportation, the number of people, vehicles, and so on, and for the waste management, they have the waste that has been avoided and the reduction and materials sourced. Okay, now you should be updated on the various green bond pillars. So we will go into breakout groups, and I encourage everyone to participate in the discussion. I know it's more difficult to have that kind of discussion compared to if we were all in the same room sitting on various tables and then talking there. That would be the ideal solution, obviously, but we hope that we get a good discussion going. Maybe as part of the learning exercise as well, this is part of the regular second opinion process. We would have this discussion in our institute as well if we are providing a second opinion on such a framework. And we are all working from home, obviously, now too. So we have these discussions now also online. So it's a good practice for everyone to engage in this group discussion now in this more challenging digital form. Kristen, we will join together with ISD the breakout groups. We are there for questions. We will not lead the discussion necessarily, but are there if you have any questions, and then we will report back in the bigger group and summarize the pitfalls, the strengths that you have identified, and what you think about the alignment with the Green Bond principles. Rachel, I think we can start the breakout groups if you don't have any other technical comments. Yeah?
Okay. Yes, please. Thank you. 20 minutes. And you just repeat the question again just now.
The question of the
สตาร์ทแล้ว
ไม่เป็นไรค่ะ Please start.
Which breakout groups are you joining, Matthew, David?
I'll go into breakout group 4.
Okay, so I can join 3, I guess.
No, I think all of you already pre-assigned.
Okay, good.
Okay, yes, cool, great. I mean, it says for me that I can join any of them. So I don't know.
Yes, me
You are
too.
as a co-host. You can join any group at any time. You can jump around.
Okay, but okay, so we have to agree which one we join then.
Yes, I think we can always go out.
So
yeah.
So Christine's in 4.
I just gotta go in 1 now. Okay, bye.
Okay, David, you want to go in 3?
Okay, I go in 3.
I'll go in 2.
Thank you, everybody. I don't know where I am now.
But 3 is already kind of like 7. Okay, whatever.
So I think we still in the big room. น้องวอนโบคะพี่ไม่เห็นอะไรให้คลิกคำว่า break out นั่นที่ถูกใช่ไหมน้องอาร์ตไม่ต้องรีบนะพี่รอได้เอาละเหลือห้องเราเท่านั้นแล้วค่ะแต่พี่ก็ยังไม่เห็นอะไรเลยนะไม่เป็นไรนะคะไม่รีบ Okay, I think we can start with the main room, please.
Rachada, I just want to double check, is David and Kristen, are they back too? Because otherwise I think we should give it a minute or two, because the rooms doesn't seem to be yet full. I think the breakout groups will automatically close in 10 seconds, so let's just give them a few seconds.
Yes, because the main room is starting now. So please wait for a few minutes. I think it's coming back now. Return to the main room now.
Perfect. It looks like everyone is back in the main rooms. The breakout groups were forced shut. I hope everybody managed to complete their discussions as much as possible. I of course recognize. Yes, Kristen?
No, we were broken in the middle of a sentence, so that is interesting compared to if we have physical discussions.
Yes. There you can always save one more minute.
Yes.
But this, well, so I of course recognize this is a very short time, and you will not be able to do a full analysis of the framework. But what I also said to our group is, I hope that you get a little bit of a handle on what we were actually talking about over the last 3 days. So what does the framework look like? How do we talk about it? And just have a brief kind of introduction. Obviously, we can't do a full analysis because this would take a couple of weeks. Potentially, but we can give you an impression of what kind of questions we ask, how we look at that, and I hope that it is helpful for us all to kind of get some understanding of that. And we have a second chance with ISD in a bit on the sustainability bond. But until then, let's just do a quick recap round to kind of bring a couple of thoughts back to the group. To have a little bit of a bigger discussion as well. And so I would just say, like, to group one, which I've been part of, would you mind sharing a few thoughts of what we discussed in the group?
Yes, sure. Hi everyone. My name is Fontip. I will share the result from group one, and for the group member, if you have any comment, please feel free to jump in. Basically, we're talking about use of proceeds, which is more in line with the SDG and Green Bond Principle, and then we're talking about the pitfall of the use of proceeds, which is although there's a certification of the sustainable agriculture, but we are not sure that what kind of lowering climate impact this certification is offering. And for the energy efficiency, there's unclear definition of what energy efficiency project means and what included. And for the sustainable transportation, we are not sure what kind of sources of electricity and biofuels, whether it's come from fossil fuel or non-fossil fuels or renewable energy. And we then talking a little bit about the report as well on they should integrate for the sustainable agriculture, what kind of machinery they use or what kind of crops they sell to the customer. So it will better to have information in the report on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the great summary. Yes, we talked a lot about the use of proceeds and reporting. We didn't have enough time to talk about all aspects of the Green Bond Principles, so we had to skip over management of proceeds and selection. But maybe one of the other groups has managed to touch upon these topics. So I would like to ask Group 2 if they have something to share in addition to what has been shared now. Is there somebody from group 2 that can tell us a little bit what has been discussed?
Hi, hello everyone. I am Jaturan Sutong from Tris Rating, from group 2. So let me talk about what we discussed before. Like first of all, I will start with like alignment of the framework to the green bond principle. So in the big picture, so the overall of the framework is aligned with the green bond principle. They have like all 4 pillars, and also talking into the detail of each pillars as well. And for the strengths of this green bond frameworks, first one is they have broad criteria for various projects. So I do understand that this is the bank and they're trying to provide loan to many kinds of projects. So it would be good for the company to get these loans. And as well as they have a strong selection of the eligible green loans. So they have like green committee to consider this as well. However, for the pitfall that we have seen that in the selection criteria, they have kind of like they don't have much detail since in many of the project that they are considering. For example, like they have just a number in the energy efficiency. For example, they have like to reduce energy loss, to reduce energy consumption or reduce energy loss for 25%. But in another eligible green loan, they don't have such a specific criteria for that. But and another thing is that if we take a look at the reporting, they don't have any hard target for each of the project. For example, if we take a look into the renewable energy, the report just need the company to report that how much installed capacity or expect annual generation, and that's it. Like what is the hard target for this? Yeah, that's all I think.
Thank you so much to Group 2. A lot of very interesting and very good observations there, also touching upon issues that have been raised in Group 1 with regards to the selection criteria that have been put in place and the selection. With regard to the reporting, you're touching upon another very important topic, and that is targets. What we're looking at here is the Green Bond Principles part, so the 4 different pillars of the Green Bond Principles. But one very important aspect of our assessment would, of course, also be the company, the issuer itself. And if you remember from what Kristen talked about on yesterday in terms of governance, this is part of our governance assessment. So we would, for example, look into what kind of targets the company has, what kind of climate policies and ambitions there are in addition to the green bond framework. And then this, of course, plays into the reporting as well. So if the company has a specific target on a company level, for example, as you mentioned, installing a certain amount of capacity, that can be followed up very easily afterwards with the reporting. So then you as an assessment provider can look into this alignment and point out if there are any gaps. So very good observation. Thank you to Group 2. Group 3, can you talk a little bit about your observations?
Hi, thank you. So I'm Sarini reporting from Group 3. I think similar to Group 1, we also spent a lot of time on the use of proceeds. So we didn't really get the time to cover all aspects of the bond. But so our observation from the use of proceeds is that there appear to be different level of clarity between the different kinds of projects. We also have similar thoughts to Group 1 in terms of organic agriculture, that they unsure about whether the certification is enough to explain or demonstrate environmental benefits, because Kun Devi also assisted us a lot, so thanks for that. But so agriculture can potentially have a net negative impact on the climate in terms of methane, cattle, and so on. So I think we would need more information on the both the actual methodology or certification scheme of the organic agriculture, and also maybe the impact reporting as well. So not just saying that how many hectares or how many schemes have been implemented. And then there will also, we discussed some more information we might need on other items, such as for energy, renewable energy, we may need more information on the technology or the production that's being used. There was also one question, I think this is about governance or management, raised about whether the so-called Green Committee, the composition maybe could be more clear, and also the process of project selection could be made more, I think, detailed. Since many of these projects are very quite broad. So I think the broader the projects are, I think that makes the governance or the project selection process more important. So I think that's pretty much what we were discussing in Group 3. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, great observations, very important points that need to be discussed in the second opinion process. And you're running into what we run into every time we assess green or sustainable finance frameworks, and that is, after looking at this framework, we often have a lot of questions. We're having these like, okay, what does that even mean? What do they want to finance? Because one of our jobs is to make this framework practical and to write this in our second opinion or into our review. And so what we often do would then be, what does that include? Could that include any kind of deforestation, for example, talking about agriculture? What do you do to avoid that? Could you sell to biofuel manufacturers? And so you're asking all these questions to get more depth to this project category, so that you can kind of narrow it down in your assessment, and also in the second opinion, so investors know what has been financed. Because if maybe the issuer is only active in a very specific agricultural activity, that could already narrow it down, but the criteria are not that narrow. So there are very good observations on that. And also you mentioned selection. And of course, the selection process that you very rightly stated is crucial, especially when you have a very broad framework. And what we look at there is then that there is sufficient environmental competence included, and that the safeguards are in place, that potentially harmful projects are not selected. So that could include, for example, that they might consult or include in the selection process external experts. That have a say in what kind of projects are being financed. That could safeguard some of our concerns, but also what could safeguard some of our concerns in the selection is if they are including mandatory screening steps. So, for example, saying we require a certain type of analysis before we include it, we require a certain impact assessment, we require that reduction of emissions are guaranteed. So there's all kinds of various safeguards that you could put in place. That depends, of course, on the issue and the capabilities. But you're right, the selection in that regard is a crucial element. So thank you so much to Group 3. Group 4, what has been discussed in your group?
Hi, perhaps I take a stab on this. Christine, we Group 4, right? All right, great. Can you guys hear me? All right.
We can hear you well.
Perfect. So this is Warud from Bond Critic. We discussed a lot on the project selection, actually, not so much on user proceed, if you will. First, to answer the question, the alignment with GBP, the framework definitely aligned with GBP. For the strength first, from what I see, it has impact reporting. It has green committee, which is helpful. Last but not least, it has its use, Cicero, as a reviewer. I think that's a good sign. On the pitfall, we have looked into multiple pitfalls actually. Number one, we feel that the framework is a bit too broad. There's no exclusion clause in the user proceed. Number two, on the project selection, we feel that the green committee is not clearly defined. There's no ESG officer. We want to know more about the CV of people involved, if they have the background in sustainability. Number three, some of us feel that the annual reporting, even though it's a minimum requirement, is a bit infrequent. We would like to see a 6-month reporting if they can. And last but not least, on the pitfall, it has stated that any unallocated proceed can be invested basically outside the green project. So we're not happy with that, because we want every dollar and cents to be invested in green purpose, if you will. Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you so much. Great observations, and you covered a lot of ground in Group 4, so very, very efficient. Many points have been raised, so that's good when it comes up to the broadness of the framework, the selection criteria, the qualifications that are required in the selection process. You also raised the issues with the reporting. 6 months for some issuers might be quite challenging. I would say annual reporting is probably the norm. But of course, there's room for improvement, and it depends a lot on what's being financed and the kind of the forward-looking approach. You raised the management of proceeds, and that is one element we haven't talked about now in the other groups probably, and that's a concern. You're absolutely right. Of course, the companies are raising money, and sometimes substantial amounts of money. So our assessment has to make sure that the money is tracked and separated in a way that it cannot be used for unsustainable practices, at least not in a large amount. So what we look for is it tracked or separated in a different account appropriately? And what do they use the money for before it is allocated, if it is not allocated? What could, for example, happen is that they raise $100 million of volume, and then they say, okay, we keep this for 3 years, and then we spend it at the end of the 3 years. So that would mean that for 3 years, it could be just laying around. And in this case, it could be just used according to the liquidity policy. And we, of course, need to find out what that would include. So potentially, they could invest it in, let's say, company stocks or in other investment opportunities they have for the 3 years. And then after 3 years, they allocate it potentially to green, but that's a long time in the future. And therefore, we have to, on the one side, check what their own criteria are in terms of like how they manage the proceeds. Maybe they just keep it as cash or cash equivalents, or they are investing it only in, as you said, in potentially in green projects in the meantime, if it's not allocated to the final project. And then also, what do they report on? In terms of allocation, will they report on allocated amounts and unallocated amounts, so investors afterwards know what they have actually invested, and potentially even they could disclose the temporary allocation of the proceeds as well. So like what kind of instruments have been used? Was it fossil intensive investments or not? So this kind of checks, that's part of our job to look at what they're using the money for. In the meantime, how do they manage their the capital they're actually raising? Okay, thank you to all groups. I think there was a great discussion, at least in Group 1. That's the only group I can reflect on. And then also great that there was so much valuable feedback provided to the bigger group. That was really, really helpful. We have another session with ISD now, where we look into a different framework that is also very exciting and also even more complicated because we're covering the social there as well. Are there any final questions on the green session that we did now, or on the framework? Otherwise, I would just pass it on to David if there are no immediate questions, or we can answer them later as well. Okay, then in the interest of time, I'm passing it on to ISD. Thank you so much for the valuable contributions and your input. That was really, really helpful.
Thank you, Bernard. So my question is, we normally have a break here. Do we have a break, or for the sake of time, we just continue?
Why don't we break here, and then we come back, and then 5 minutes for the recap. I mean, not recap, the introduction, and then we go back to the breakout room. Is that okay?
That's fine. That's fine. I think we will need more than 5 minutes for the introduction, because also Matt is going to cover the affordable housing and some other social topics. No, Matt? So,
yeah. So
yeah.
we'll be quick though. But maybe a shorter break today. Maybe does 5 minutes work for you, Rashida?
Sure. We can come back in, now it's 12:12, so we can come back in 12:18.
Okay.
All right. Good to see you.
Yes. Thank you. And then we'll come back. See you soon. I will put the link again. Actually, I think that Kun Paniya also send all the document via the email to the participant. Good afternoon. Good morning. David, can you hear me?
I can hear you well, yes, that's no problem.
Okay, good.
But it's not gonna be me,
Shall
it's
we?
Matt is gonna start and then I take over.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yes. You ready?
Okay,
We're ready
Matthew?
to start? Ready to start?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, please start. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I just want to, and everyone can see the slides, not a problem.
Yes, we
Okay,
can see it. Yes.
perfect. Yeah, so this is just a quick follow-up to some of the discussion that we were having yesterday, and the need for sustainability bonds going forward. And we wanted to touch upon two issues that we think are particularly associated with things that are happening and trends that we're seeing in Thailand. So this focuses on sustainable infrastructure and the issues that Thailand's facing with regards to an aging population. So with regards to the access to sustainable infrastructure, obviously the figures around sustainable infrastructure can be a little bit difficult to put our hands on, but I did want to point out a couple figures with regards to basic infrastructure. And I know this can be a little bit hard to see, so I took these graphs and I made them a little bit bigger on the next slide here. And this is just, I thought it was important to kind of recognize the progress that's been made. Obviously, as you can see here, from 1990 to 2016, Thailand has basically improved with regards to the access of basic resources across all the metrics that we see here. So that's electricity, improved water resource, improved sanitation facilities, and access to clean cooking fuels and technologies. And then on the graph to the right, I did want to point out, so that is that's the region as a whole. So that includes East Asia and the Pacific countries. Now, obviously, the Pacific countries are a little bit less homogenous with regards to, you have, that includes obviously Australia, but then some of the island countries as well. But as you can see, Thailand basically outperforms in every metric. So I think it is important sometimes that we do recognize progress that we have seen. So it is something that we want to point out, but obviously wanted to note that it's important that kind of Thailand continues on this progress going forward. And especially the one thing that we do note is the clean cooking fuels and technologies that still needs to improve. And when we're talking about that as a category, that's talking about electricity, like cooking fuels that are electricity, natural gas, biogas, solar, alcohol, and fuels, and that it's more not cooking with coal and those other or those small wood stoves. So the one thing that we did also note, and it's important to know, especially with regards to when we think about the government issuing the COVID bond last year, was that a lot of this access to basic infrastructure, although we can't necessarily draw a through line between what the government is spending on and the increase in infrastructure, I would say we could probably infer that fact. And across the, across from 2010 to 2016, we have seen a fairly substantial uptick in Thailand in the amount of that the government is spending with regards to the share of GDP. And it, again, far outstripes the other countries in the region. With regards to, is there really a difference between 17, 18, 19%? I would say that there is, and that's basically the reason I'm saying that is because that is a share of the country's entire GDP. So those percentage points can make a large difference when thinking about how where the government is spending its money or how involved the government is in providing services to the citizens of a country. So again, just to highlight going forward that we know that the government is kind of availed itself to new funding to address the COVID issues, and we just hope that if they're going to continue to do that and they're going to continue to put money in, that they're doing so in a sustainable manner and towards sustainable infrastructure, if possible. I think the biggest issue that Thailand is facing, or one of the large issues, I shouldn't say the biggest, but one of the large issues is the aging society issue. And we have a very striking graph here that we can see how it's shifted since 1950 to 2020. And even I pulled some facts and figures that yes, the median age in 1990 was about 24 years old, and by 2015 it had increased to 38. What that trend really means for us is that about 72% of the Thai population by 2050 will be what they call the age dependency ratio. So that means that 72% of the Thai population will be either under the age of 15 or over the age of 65. So we'll see a real crunch on the working population, obviously having to support both younger people and older people, and government resources. Unfortunately, we actually, based on the current growth patterns, we think that this will continue, that the situation will continue to worsen, and this is basically because you have low, you have low natural population increases, but you have high, you have a high median age. So, as you can see from the chart here, Thailand is amongst the older populations in Asia, and from a policy standpoint, we're likely to see that there's going to be an increased need for raising funds into things like for social infrastructure. So again, we're talking about hospitals, we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about things that are associated with elder care. So just again, these are issues that we know are present in Thailand, but we do think that the sustainability side of things, or the sustainability bonds, can address some of these issues going forward, as we've seen already with the COVID bonds and with the bond issued by the NHA. So we hope that that trend continues. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to David, who's going to, I believe, share his screen and take us through.
Matt, thank you very much. I mean, but you can keep control
on
the slides.
Okay.
Maybe it's easier, so we don't have to switch.
Sure.
So next slide. So I'm just gonna say a couple of words about the Islamic Development Bank case study. I mean, in the morning you already had basically kind of a good overview, and hopefully you also had the time to actually look at the framework a little bit yourself as well. But we thought it's important to actually give you a summary anyway, because so then it's just fresh into in your mind, and then you can actually get started much faster in the breakout groups that way. So first, I'm going to look at the use of proceeds. Just say share a couple of thoughts on this. So the use of proceeds actually divided. I mean, the whole framework is divided into two sections. First, the ISDB can issue green sukuks under this framework. That's going to be actually using the green project categories. Also, the framework covers sustainability sukuks, which is basically allocating funds towards the green project categories as well as the social project categories. For those of you who don't really understand sukuk, basically sukuk is just a type of bond that's actually following Sharia compliant financing principles. So what actually the ISDB framework also highlights is that it's possible to actually, so they want to make it possible to issue sustainability sukuks even when financing social project categories only. So as you probably noticed, that there is no three categories, so there's no social sukuks. So they want to, basically they say that in the framework that is not a problem. We can issue a sustainability sukuk with social project categories only. Here on the next slide, yes. So here you can see the different project categories for green and social. So for green, we have renewable energy. That basically it aims to improve energy access, promote enhance energy efficiency in generation and distribution, enhance the engagement of private sector. We also have clean transportation as a green project category that's going to support economic infrastructure, including sustainable transport for greater connectivity. It will support science, technology, and innovation. And then the next one is energy efficiency. That's going to improve energy access, promote renewable energy use, and improve energy efficiency for buildings. And then, I mean, I will not have time. Hello? Yeah, so I will not go through every single one of them just for the sake of time, but just to list them here, we're going to have pollution, prevention, and control. We will also have environmental, social, so environmental sustainable management of natural living resources and land use, sustainable water and wastewater management on the green side. On the social side, we will have employment generation and SME financing, affordable housing, and affordable basic infrastructure, access to essential services, and socioeconomic advancement and empowerment. Right. So what's very interesting in this ISDB framework that they have actually quite an exhaustive list of exclusion criteria, which is, I think, is quite welcome. It actually makes the project categories more specific, and so some of our questions that we ask, especially on the carbon footprint or fossil fuel related questions that you usually ask in second party opinions, they actually exclude them already, so that makes our life easier as a SPO provider. In the first line, you can see some of the exclusion criteria on alcohol, gambling, etc. That's basically in line with the principles of Sharia. So that's given considering that they're issuing sukuks, so not bonds. And then of course they have exclusions on upstream fossil fuel extraction, production, electricity production, energy efficiency of core infrastructure, energy efficiency project that lead to an increase in CO2 emissions, processing, storage, marketing of gas, coal, and oil, etc., etc. So on the selection process, just a couple of points I wanted to highlight quickly. So any projects financed under this sustainability framework, sustainable bond framework, has to be in compliance with the following international standards. So again, it's always good to see this in the framework, because that actually provides us more clarity about how projects are eligible. I mean, what projects are eligible under the framework. So here I would just highlight a couple of them. For example, the ILO labor standards is always good to see, especially I mean, if we cover social project categories. Also, they have actually very detailed policies on climate change and how they are incorporating climate risk in management of the proceeds and also allocation of proceeds. Next. So still on the selection process, they actually said in the framework that they will be setting up a sustainable finance task force that will be actually in charge of the selection and evaluation process. So the SFTF will have high-level representatives from different global practices, and what actually discussed in the framework that each of these representatives have will be an expert of different areas of sustainable development and sustainability in general, and it's what it was good to see that as we are talking about sustainability sukuk. They had actually experts on both on the green and the social side of sustainability, so that's something important. And the next one is the management of proceeds. So here they will be setting up a green, social, and sustainability Sukuk register, which is also called the GSS Sukuk register. So basically, any funding that they raise gonna be earmarked for allocation, using this register. And what's actually was important to note as well as we were doing this SPO, that any funds under this register will be actually invested until actually deployed and allocated to different projects that they finance. It will be invested according to ISDB's liquidity policy. So it means that they don't have any requirement of investing these proceeds, based on using this framework, obviously. So they actually can actually spend it on treasury bonds, treasury bills, and other government securities, according, as they would do for any excess funds that the ISDB has. And of course, then after they have to deploy and use the funds to refinance projects that are eligible for under the framework. So what you have to also keep in mind that they're gonna, of course, all of these investments are Sharia compliant because we are talking with sukuks, and they will of course include incorporate different ESG criteria in the investment process, as discussed in more detail in the framework. The next slide, reporting, and the last one is on reporting. So they actually have a quite an ambitious reporting, and here I didn't include too much detail because then this is something that you can see in the framework. They will be doing reporting on annual basis that contains both the allocation and impact metrics. Like again, they have a long list of impact metrics that you can see in the framework. And the Sustainable Finance Task Force will be responsible for the preparation of this reporting for them. And the first report will be published within 1 year from the time of green and sustainability sukuk issuance. And so basically each sukuk that they issue will have an independent report as created for it. All right, so that's all on the introduction of the ISDB Sustainable Finance Framework. So now we're going to form the groups again, just like before. So now you should be quite familiar with the process. We're going to be forming 4 groups again. And each of us, so ISD and Cicero, will join in each of the breakout groups.
Are we expected, Rachida, everyone goes back to the same breakout group that they were in?
Yes, we expect that.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we start breakout now. Thank you. 20 minutes for this time.
All right.
Hello. Yes,
Right.
we are back.
So, Roger, I think you should kind of repeat what you just said in the breakout group at the end, because so everybody's on the same page.
Yes, since now it's 12:57, and then we try to finish it by 1:15 Bangkok time. So we try to wrap up everything now, but if it's not finished, we can do tomorrow, because tomorrow we have more time. Okay, I give the floor to you now. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So, yes, so we are definitely short of time. We have 15 minutes left. So let's get moving fast. I would say breakout group number 1. Can you please report back and share what you found in your group?
Hi, Anita from group number 1. So, like overall, we think that like it's kind of generally aligned with like the green one and social principle.
I can hear you very badly, by the way. I don't know whether the others are the same.
Okay, is it better now?
Yeah, better. Yeah, good.
Okay.
Very good.
So in general, we think that it's kind of aligned with like the principles overall. We do touch a little bit on the use of the use of proceed element. So we talk about the project category. So we mainly focus on the green project first. We do have questions on like the clean transportation that they say that they will the eligible criteria is to invest in the electric rail transportation. But our further question would be like, would it also impact like the social perspective? Like for example, like if it's using the forest area or including like local landscape, and also during the construction, do we create like a pollution that also destroy the environment as well? And the like material use is from fossil intensive, and also like after like the construction is finished, it can be like used for the passenger and also foods. Whether like those foods are using like on the fossil base as well. So it's more like the use of those transportation. And we also talk about the energy efficiency, for example, like the building of the building energy efficiency, and also the material that used for those buildings is like fossil based. Is it fossil component? Okay. And then we talk about the selection process. The selection and evaluation process. We think that it's kind of elaborate and pretty nice setup on how they detailing the detail. They do have like due diligence process and kind of elaborate. So we think that they are pretty good on that one. I think that's all we discussed.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think the selection process is definitely very strong. I mean, it's one of the strengths of this framework. It actually goes through a 2-tier selection process, and also they have very strict climate policy in place. So I think it was something that I was also impressed by. It's again, they go beyond what is what is required by the ICMA principles in that regard, at least. So I think that's a good point. And also, I mean, it's good to see that you guys discussed both the environmental and social side of the social project category as well, that you mentioned transportation. So that's also, as I highlighted it yesterday in my intervention, it's something that we do with Cicero as part of the sustainability bond framework assessments, or SPOs. And just something to add, so every time you actually look at infrastructure place like a building, it could be for school, it could be for hospital, the energy efficiency is certainly something that you can always highlight in terms of environmental risks or questions that you want to ask on the environmental cost side. So thank you. The breakout group number 2, please. So number 2, please, somebody. I see many hands, so try to in the air. No, somebody can maybe report back.
Jarchurun, are you going to report back for our group?
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. All right. So what we have in discussing is about how strong of the framework as well. They have like a good extendable in the project category for each of the eligible criteria, and they also they're addressing linking to the SDG as well in each category, and also including the exclusion criteria, which is good for them to select, and as well as they are also linking the framework to their laws like to Sharia and the Sukuk as well. So it would be nice for them to address this to the projects. Another thing is that we also discussing about the reporting as well. So they also including the allocation reporting and impact reporting. So it would be nice for them to track the bond as well. And another important things is that we also discussing about the green eligible criteria, and it's the same thing as the previous one that we did for the bank, for the Swiss bank, that they have no specific target for this, and we also discussing about if we are going to address how green is this green bond, we might need to discuss more to the issue that can we specify the target as well, because if we have no ambition in that, so we cannot saying okay, is this bond, is this framework is light green or medium green or dark green, for example. Yeah, and they also including the in the last part, they include the external review that they are going to use the second party opinion, and they also follow up with the post-issue and verification as well. Yeah, that's all for me.
I have one thing to add. So we asked Matthew what, the perceived weakness for this would be, because it looks really, really good. Is that we don't know exactly how much funding will go into social projects or green projects. So there's no clear breakdown of what goes where. And so I think to have a better vision of what this would do would be great. Yeah.
Yes, I think that was actually a question that we did ask. If I remember correctly, in the SPO, we did ask about the proportion, and I think it's kind of in line with also what Farah said yesterday, that maybe they have some initial pipelines in mind when they do the framework, but don't forget that the framework is being used over the years, so it's something that they will have no answer for really. Maybe just they can say, okay, what we have in the pipeline is kind of like 50-50 or 60-40%, but it's not realistic to actually expect them to give an exact percentage, especially don't want to commit to a percentage, right? Because many things can change. Even though if the pipeline, maybe they will not be financing everything in that pipeline. And so I want to kind of like react very quickly on one thing. I agree that the Sukuk framework assessment is it makes it slightly easier on the social side than it would be if it was just a normal bond framework, because the Sukuk includes different principles, especially on the social side that Sukuk has to comply with anyway. So that certainly makes our lives a bit easier. So, but let's move to breakout group number 3.
Hello, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so from group 3, what we discuss is a couple of things. The first one is, so first of all, we focus on the social projects because we want to switch from what we did in the last session. And the first one is about the SME. So I think we should have a clearer definition or something about how they can define the size of the business in the SME terms that are eligible for this kind of project. And then we also talked about the green side of the social project. For example, for the affordable housing, there are many qualities of the houses that we can think of. For example, the heating system, whether it's clearly defined about whether it has to be something that is not from fossil fuel, for example, or is that okay, or something like that. Whether it has any plan for the management of wastes that can mitigate the impact in the surrounding areas of the houses, or for example, in the basic infrastructure topic, we also talk about, again, a similar theme, whether the access to electricity, clean drinking water, something like that, would that the creation of this kind of thing, would they have any environmental impact to the surrounding area or not? And one last thing, this is my personal view that I didn't have a time to discuss in the group, which is that is it a mandatory measure that we should also make it clear that the access mean that, for example, electricity is there, but you've got to pay that by yourself? Because for me, I think if that is the case, then it may not help the poor people, because even though the infrastructure is there, but they don't have the money to afford, to pay the bill, then what's the point? So something like that may be an improvement that they should make it clear. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, there were some good points there. Thank you very much. So that's very good. Thank you very much for sharing this. I mean, definitely, I agree with you. I mean, as we also did discuss in the group, accessibility is super important when it comes to the social project categories. As I also said in the example before, like you can be at a hospital, but if it's just a private hospital, accessible to some of the more privileged part of the society, that's not gonna be as good as if you get a hospital that's accessible and also provides has a pricing that makes it accessible for the wider parts of wider population. So that's something that needs to be considered. Also, another area that actually we have seen problems with a lot when we do the sustainability bond frameworks is that they should be integrating some kind of green criteria, green considerations on the social project categories as well, right? So when they actually say affordable basic infrastructure, okay, that's great, but then how does the environment, do they include, or do they use some kind of environmental screening or environmental criteria when they get to that, when they deploy capital to that project category? All right, 4 minutes left, so breakout group number 4, please.
Hello, do you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, I'm free. So I'm from group number 4. So we have been discussed in each principle. So the first one of the use of proceed. So that for some of the pitfall is that they don't have mentioned on the finance and separate in terms of the finance and refinance, and in terms of the portion of the social and green bond, they did not make it like clear on how many percentage that they put to green bond and social bond, so that investor might not maybe would like to interest to know on that. And in terms of the project selection, is like compared with the first case. So this time they have some of the in terms of the social, but some of the improvement that we have seen is that in terms of the project screening, right? Sometimes they might have some of the conflict of the interest with the stakeholder. For example, if they have some invest or building in terms of the some land, so they might have some conflict of the landlord. So it might they might can do in terms of the initial impact assessment on that. In terms of the manage of proceed based on the case, it seems like the fund that they got, they put in the general account. So sometimes it's quite hard to track in terms of the proceeds that they receive. And in terms of the use of that, right, it seems like they use based on the, they use of proceed based on the liquidities policy. So not too sure whether it will align with the objective or the policy of the green bond or the social bond or not. For the last one, in terms of the reporting, so I think it's good that they have some of the impacts, social impacts figure on that. So I think it should be all from group 4. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's perfect. Very good points again. No, I mean, I agree with you on the reporting. I mean, it's quite impressive how they do it, and it's great that they actually try to report the impact of the different projects that they finance. So I think that's good to see, and I think it really goes beyond again of what is required by the Day4 principles in this case. So it would be a strength, I would say. All right, so I think that's all from my side. We are just in time. So Rachita, over to you.
Thank you so much. So at least we finish all the report back by 1:15. In this case, we're gonna move everything to tomorrow. So we will meet all of you 10:30 tomorrow, and then we will do recap, and then we can have more discussion tomorrow. Okay.
That sounds good. And just want to highlight that actually Matt put some links in the chat. So kind of if you want to know the answer to this exercise and you want to read, what are the different strengths, because we discussed strengths also in our group, and I felt that people were struggling with this concept and understand what they have to actually say. So please read those second party opinions and see what, I'm sure they will be very helpful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
ขอบคุณค่ะ
Thanks.
Speak.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.